In the heart of Nazi-occupied Europe, one army wasn't hiding. It was hunting. While much of the continent had fallen under Hitler's control, a self-made marshal was fighting back from the mountains of Yugoslavia, and somehow winning. They had no air force, no tanks, and for years, not even reliable allies. Yet, under the command of a former metalworker named Josip Broz Tito, a ragtag force of farmers and students managed to tie down hundreds of thousands of Axis troops. How did a man who once forged steel in a factory forge an army from nothing and turn a divided, occupied country into the one place Hitler's war machine could never break? April 1941. Yugoslavia collapses in just 11 days. The Nazi blitzkrieg smashes through the kingdom, shattering an army already divided by politics and mistrust. Germany, Italy, Hungary, and Bulgaria carve up the land, while the fascist Ustaše regime unleashes terror across Croatia. To most people, it seemed like the end. But in the shadows, a new kind of resistance was forming. Its leader, a man few outside Yugoslavia had ever heard of, Josip Broz, a factory worker turned revolutionary, hardened by the Russian Revolution and fluent in survival. Under his code name Tito, he saw not just defeat, but opportunity. He believed the occupation could become the spark for something new, a unified, free Yugoslavia rising from the ashes. On July 4, 1941, just weeks after Hitler invaded the Soviet Union, Tito sent out a single order: rise up. From that moment, the partisan war began. But Tito's uprising was different. While other resistance groups were fractured along ethnic lines, Tito's partisans were open to everyone. Serbs, Croats, Slovenes, Bosniaks, Jews, all were welcome under one flag, one army, one idea: brotherhood and unity. That vision didn't just inspire hope. It built the foundation for what would become the most effective resistance army in all of occupied Europe. At first, the partisans were hopelessly outgunned. They were farmers with hunting rifles and students with stolen weapons, facing some of the most experienced divisions of the German army. A head-on fight would be suicide, so Tito refused to fight their war. He invented his own. The mountains became his fortress, the forests his shield. Partisan fighters learned to strike from nowhere, sabotage supply lines, and vanish before the enemy could even respond. They destroyed railways, bridges, fuel depots, anything that fed the Nazi war machine. Every explosion forced Hitler's army to bleed men, fuel, and time. The terrain itself fought for Tito. German tanks and trucks couldn't survive the narrow mountain roads, but the partisans could slip through the ridges, move by night, and melt into the mist by dawn. The Germans launched 7 major offensives to wipe them out. 7. Each time, the partisans escaped, regrouped, and struck again. They took terrible losses, but every survivor returned stronger, more skilled, more disciplined. By 1943, the world's most powerful army still couldn't capture a man who had started with nothing. But the Nazis weren't Tito's only enemies. Inside Yugoslavia, another war was raging, a war for the soul of the resistance. Tito's partisans faced the Chetniks, a royalist movement led by Draža Mihailović, Serbian nationalists loyal to the exiled king. At first, the two groups tried to cooperate, but their goals were irreconcilable. Mihailović wanted to wait, to conserve strength until the Allies landed. Tito believed delay meant death, and that every German reprisal would drive more civilians to join the resistance. By late 1942, the fragile alliance had collapsed. Worse, many Chetnik units began collaborating with Italian and even German forces to hunt Tito's men. It was civil war inside a world war, but the Allies were watching. British agents on the ground and codebreakers listening to German communications saw the truth unfold. While the Chetniks were lying low, or worse, cooperating, Tito's partisans were the only force truly fighting the Axis. Churchill's view was simple. He would support whoever was killing the most Germans. At the Tehran Conference in 1943, The Allies made their decision. Mihailovich was cut off, and Tito became their chosen partner. Within weeks, Allied airlifts began supplying weapons, ammunition, and medical aid. For the first time, the partisans weren't fighting alone. They were transforming from a guerrilla band into a real army. By early 1944, Tito's army numbered over 200,000 fighters, and Hitler's obsession had reached its peak. He ordered a daring plan, Operation Russelsprung, or Knight's Move. Its goal was simple: kill Tito and end the partisan resistance once and for all. On May 25, 1944, Tito's unofficial birthday, German paratroopers and glider commandos launched a surprise assault on the town of Drvar. The attack began with heavy bombing. Then waves of SS troops dropped directly onto the town. The fighting was fierce. Tito's guards held out against impossible odds, buying every second they could. Inside his headquarters, a cave at the edge of town, Tito and his staff made a desperate escape through a hidden passage. They climbed down a rope into the riverbed below, just as the Germans broke through the entrance. They missed him by minutes. When the SS stormed the cave, they found nothing but a new marshal's uniform, a gift waiting for Tito's birthday. The operation had failed. Thousands of partisans died that day, but their leader's survival became legend. Even Hitler couldn't kill Tito. After Drvar, the tide turned decisively. With the Balkan Air Force providing cover and the Red Army pushing from the east, Tito's forces went on the offensive. By late 1944, the partisans were no longer guerrillas. They were an army. In October, they liberated Belgrade alongside Soviet troops. But unlike much of Eastern Europe, the Soviets didn't do the heavy lifting here. Tito's men had already freed vast regions of the country on their own. They fought relentlessly, chasing retreating German divisions through every valley and mountain until May 1945. When the war finally ended, Yugoslavia stood free, liberated largely by its own people. The cost was staggering. Over 1 million lives lost, cities destroyed, families torn apart. The war had been liberation, civil war, and revolution all at once. But Tito had done what no one thought possible. He had driven Hitler's armies from his homeland, and from those ashes, built a new socialist, federated Yugoslavia. The story of Tito and his partisans isn't just about military triumph. It's about creation through chaos. A factory worker who rose to challenge an empire. A commander who outwitted the Nazis, outlasted his rivals, and united a nation that had been shattered by war. Tito's legacy is complex. To some, a dictator. To others, a liberator. But one truth remains. He proved that resistance isn't just about surviving. It's about shaping what comes after. In the mountains of Yugoslavia, a man with no tanks, no air force, and no allies became the nightmare of Hitler's army, and the architect of his nation's freedom. If stories like this help you see World War II in a new light, then subscribe, because this is just one of many forgotten battles where ordinary people changed the course of history.